Okay, so it looks like we can be just a few months away from the bond taper. So a select set of chief economists in the US were surveyed by Reuters, and the majority of them feel as though the FOMC will announce in September, which is as soon as this next month, that they will begin their bond purchases the following month. So either in October or November. So what does that mean? So we've been talking about this a lot. We were saying, look, Jerome Powell gave us the indication that if he saw a couple of good jobs reports coming in, he would feel more comfortable taking his foot off the taper pedal. Now, we saw a good jobs report come in with the non-farm payrolls. We also saw what could be an inflection point in the inflation figures, which we went through on another video as well. And now we are seeing that a lot of economists are feeling as though Jerome Powell will now announce his taper. Now, why would the Fed want to announce their taper right now? So we need to understand that this is almost like a seesaw balancing effect. Now, the Fed, if they need to be prepared for all situations. If the economy slows down, they need to be prepared, which is what they've been doing with the stimulus. But if the economy starts to really take pace and pick up, they need to be prepared for that also. And typically, when inflation really starts to hike and economies start to grow really quickly, what the Fed does is increase interest rates. Now, doing that now, when there's currently $120 billion a month of assets being purchased, will give you a jarring effect in the economy. It's like you're doing extreme easing and tightening at the same time, and that doesn't work. So they need to undo all this easing, they need to undo the taper, such that when they feel they're going to need to start hiking interest rates, they can do so effectively without this judder. So think of a seesaw. They need to go through that effect, and then they can start increasing interest rates. Doing one before taper's complete doesn't allow them to, will judder the economy and won't give the desired outcome. Now, we know that given the kind of readings we're seeing, if we were to assume we're going to see some more good jobs numbers for August and September, and inflation indeed was an inflection point, and we see a lower reading for the latter months following the one we've just looked at, then the Fed need to be in a position where by mid-2022, they need to be able to increase interest rates if they want to, right? They need to have that optionality. Doesn't mean they're going to do it, but they need to ensure that that bow is in their armor, that they can increase interest rates if inflation kept ticking the way we expected it. Now, for them to be able to do that, let's work backwards. That means they would have to have completed their taper by mid-2022. Now, we know that you want to do a steady taper. You don't want a knee-jerk reaction taper. And we know currently they're sitting at 80 billion of treasuries purchased a month and 40 billion in mortgage-backed securities a month. So if we were to work backwards around 8 to 10 months from the mid of 2022, June or July period, we get to October, November period of this year. So that's why a lot of people are saying, look, they've got the Jackson Hole Symposium where all the Fed FOMC get together. They could be discussing that now. They could announce it in September for an October, November start. Now, if they started in October and November for 8 to 10 months and they scaled back starting from 80 billion treasuries and they knock down, let's say they knock down 10 billion of treasuries a month. That was going to take them 8 months, and they knock down 5 billion of the mortgage-backed securities. That will give them an 8-month taper. If they want to do it over 10 months, they can knock down 8 in treasuries, and they can knock down 5 in the mortgage-backed securities, right? And that's going to get them to zero by mid-2022, which gives them the optionality to then say, okay, our tapering's done, but we still need to increase interest rates. Let's start increasing that base rate. Okay, so that's the plan we're having now. And now the question now arises is, look, Jerome Powell has handled this very well. He talked a lot a few months about talking about raising interest rates, and he learned from the 2008 crisis, because in the 2008 crisis, what happened with the taper tantrum was the unexpected, right? It was pretty much unprecedented. There was no modern day precedent set around what's going to happen, and so there was a taper tantrum. But you saw here, when the Fed members were speaking, the bonds were at 1.75 and they went down to 1.25 instead of going up. So the markets know that we're heading towards a taper, and therefore that's why a lot of investors and economists are not actually feeling like this is going to have an impact on the markets as we thought. There won't be a taper tantrum, and everyone's just going to get on with it because everybody was expecting this not to be a permanent thing. Now, we need to remember that tapering is not irreversible. If the Fed need to, they can always undo the easing and start untapering and purchasing more again. So if things weren't going their way, they do have that optionality. But the key here is, the messaging hasn't changed, and that's why this has not really shaken the market. We were pretty flat on the S&P and Dow yesterday. That was due to the various different reasons around uncertainty geopolitically with Afghanistan, the slowing in the China figures, Delta variant concerns. I shared that in the other video, why this week's going to be a bit of a tricky one for equities. But I don't feel like any of this taper talk is spooking the market at all. We seem to be quite comfortable around it. And I think, look, you've got to look at the backdrop. So there's been a lot of fiscal stimulus. There's been a lot of stimulus into the economy. There's been super easy monetary policy, which we've never seen. And you can see that GDP has increased by 6.5% in this last quarter, which is the fastest recovery. So that, with the backdrop of perhaps an inflation rates, a few good job figures, people are expecting the Fed to start tapering, and so it will almost be the opposite effect, that if they don't, maybe that could annoy the market. It doesn't seem like we're long away from tapering. We'll see what the next meeting holds from the FOMC. Will they announce a taper or not? Either way, I think the market is prepared for them to start doing the taper nice and gently, taking their foot off the gas instead of juddering that brake with interest rates suddenly and panicking and not having a plan. I think it's a sensible choice, and it's probably the right way to go, and investors will be bought into this. So there you have it, guys. Looks like we're not far away from taper. Will it start in October or November? We'll find out. Like I said, the FOMC are meeting at the Jackson Hole Symposium. Perhaps we'll get an idea there. If not, we're there or thereabouts. Even the most dovish economists are saying that Q1 is when the taper is going to begin. But I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at the last quarter here in 2021. So there you have it, guys. An update on the Fed. We'll see you in the next one.